Okay, hey, we're doing another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff today. I have really awesome little comparison for you guys. Of course, thanks to our friends over at Belmont Watches for providing these two pieces. And one of them, if you guys are familiar with the channel, you might recognize because it's actually my old King Seiko reissue. It's actually had it brought back in because I wanted to actually review this gorgeous Omega. This thing is just fantastic, very handsome, probably one of the prettiest Omega watches I've seen in a very long time. But as soon as I got it in hand, my first thought was, man, this reminds me so much of my King Seiko. So thankfully the team over at Belmont obliged, since they have my old King Seiko, they're able to send it back in so that I could compare these two watches. I feel like Seiko, because it is of course, a more affordable brand, a lot of the times it gets compared to cheaper watches. So I did want to kind of show you guys a more upscale comparison in terms of King Seiko, and also, of course, just showcase this, relatively unknown, really, really gorgeous Omega Seamaster. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get these pieces in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, let's get the Seiko of it out of the way. For some of you guys that are, of course, subscribers, you've seen this piece before. This is the SJE083. It's a 3,000 piece limited edition, 140th anniversary King Seiko KSK 44KS reissue, and it's a looker. I mean, I wore and own this with pride for a very long time, and I have to say it's, still in pretty perfect condition. It does have Zaratsu hand polishing and, of course, a Dia Shield hard coating to cover that and protect it, which I think it's done a really outstanding job of. You do also have a box dome sapphire with actually a beautiful chamfer on the edge there. One of the nicer sapphire crystals I've seen on any Seiko product, to be honest, to include Grand Seiko, because the chamfering on this piece of sapphire is just impressive. So really quite gorgeous, guys. 6L35 automatic movement, nice and thin. 45-hour power reserve, 4 hertz beat rate, so 28,800 vibrations per hour. It even has this nice gold tone King Seiko emblem on the rear side there. Applied indices, nice and beveled. 5 bar of water resistance, 20mm lugs, a genuine crocodile strap, which tapers from 20mm down to about 16mm, and you get this awesome retro milled sign buckle. Now, for a bit of the rarer bird in the room, check out this gorgeous Omega. My goodness. So this is an Omega Seamaster 1948 London 2012. It is a 1948 piece limited edition, and it was basically created to represent the fitting link between the London 1948 and 2012 Olympic Games. This goes for currently from Belmont Watches. You can get this for $58.50, which is really great. But also, hey, $2,000 you can get my personal old King Seiko reissue. So it's interesting in terms of the price, right? $2,000, and I think it's still very comparable to a watch that is well over 5,000, closer to 6 if you think about rounding up there at $58.50. This has a 39mm diameter, 11.2mm thickness, so it's slightly thinner than the King, but also, doesn't have quite a pronounced crystal there. You see beautiful box dome sapphire that actually has anti-reflective coating on both sides, inner and outer, which is fantastic. It has a 48.5mm lug to lug, so this is going to be a little bit longer lug to lug. I shouldn't say a little, it's a decent amount longer. The King Seiko was 44.7, this is 48.5. Also done in 316L stainless steel, but this actually has some brushing on it, not fully polished. But it's uncoated, so you can see there's going to be some hairline scratches here and there. I mean, they'd be easy to buff out, but of course, this is a piece that is stock right now. So if you would like to purchase it from Belmont Watches, you absolutely do have that option. Now, also has a signed push-pull crown, similar to, of course, the King Seiko in terms of spec. And then inside is your automatic Omega caliber 2202, which is a chronometer movement, which is great in terms of keeping time and guaranteed time tolerances. It has a 48-hour power reserve, so slightly longer power reserve, but it beats at a slowly lower beat rate at 3.5 hertz, so 200 vibrations per hour beat rate. It has a solid case back with that beautiful 18 karat gold 2012 Olympic Games medallion in there. The indices are, of course, nicely applied and polished. And then you do have this matte silver dial with that beautiful subdial above the 6 o'clock, which surprisingly has a little pop of blue. Check that out. Heat blued hand there, and I didn't even realize that when I first looked at this. I was a little indifferent about it. Did I prefer it? I mean, it is strange that it's the only piece of blue. I think it would have been nice to have some other level of blue text. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think? Just to kind of tie that up, but it is a nice touch. It's a nice feature. It does make it different and less monochromatic in terms of just being a little bit lively to the eye there and that visual interest. It also has slightly more water resistance, which is a bit unexpected, but hey, this is a Seamaster. So maybe it shouldn't have been unexpected. So 12 bar or 120 meters of water resistance, 19 millimeter lugs versus 20. So, and then this has an alligator strap versus the crocodile strap. So this is going to be 19 and does taper down to 16 as well, to a really nice little, let me give it a quick little wipe here. Little pin buckle there, although this finger portion is, not milled, so that's, it does the job though. And honestly, it's when you get to this level of watch, those types of little specs don't matter quite as much as when you're buying, a micro brand or a value oriented watch, where it's really just trying to throw as many features at you as possible. This isn't really going to be in that camp. It's definitely more so just something gorgeous, beautifully designed, and quite desirable just on its own merits in terms of brand history and the design aspect, right? So it doesn't have to fight for your dollar quite as hard as something like a Seiko does, just because Omega has the distinct advantage of being part of the Swatch group, but it's Omega, right? And even though the Swatch group can market itself like Seiko, you see Omega as one brand, and you see Longines as another brand, you see Tissot as another brand, you see Hamilton as another brand, and each one of those has a specialized price point. That is actually a greater challenge for Seiko, because you see Seiko and you think Seiko, the cheap mall watch. And although there are various ranges, there's Seiko 5, there's Presage, there's Astron, there's the Spirit collection, there's the Essential collection, Cortura, King Seiko, Prospex. Then even within Prospex, you have Prospex LX, you have Grand Seiko, you have Creedor. So that's one of the things where, the Swatch group, I think they face a bit less resistance, because you see this watch and you just think about where it sits within the line of Omega versus how this compares to a Longines or to a Tissot, and could Omega have crammed more tech or more specs or more value in, whereas with Seiko, that's all you're going to think about is, hey, what could they have done to make this cheaper but better spec'd and everything like that. So but if you look at these two, they're quite comparable in terms of just how handsome they are. I mean, predominantly brushed, beautiful kind of everyday dress watches. Now, in terms of those categories and key characteristics in the language, you're looking for something you can wear every day that dresses up well. You're just going to want that clean, classic, minimalist design, and you're going to want something that's sensibly sized, and these really meet those requirements. And if you take a look, you do get that nice kind of polished sandwich there, where you have a little bit of brushing on the mid case, which is very nice. Now, when you compare that to the King Seiko, it's going to be all highly polished. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks good. And it actually has a little bit more of a slope when it comes to how those lugs will drape, which is nice. And, I love these corners, these angles. For me, those facets are beautiful. But here you have some more organic lines. You're still getting a bevel with a polished transition all the way around, but of course it's just a more organic shape. It's going to be a little bit more flowing, and it's nice. In terms of the strap, surprisingly, I will say the Omega strap is actually not as, I mean, I don't want to break it in, but it's very stiff. It's nice. It's really well done in terms of the stitching and everything like that. I like the pattern. But yeah, it's a very stiff, and it's you can see it's padded leather there. It's very, I don't question the quality, but it is quite stiff. Versus, I will say, I mean, not that I rarely wore this on the supplied strap. I actually had a custom strap made for it, and I wore it pretty much on that all the time. But this is actually super supple in terms of this genuine crocodile leather that they use here is beautiful. I really do like the pattern, and of course that's the natural kind of scaly pattern there. And it's very nice, and I like that it doesn't have the stitching, that it's just kind of sealed. It seems a little bit cleaner. Obviously has a bit more of just a stylistic design that really focuses more on the texture versus the stitch there, which I think can be a bit distracting. And even as you look at it, you can see a bit more of a sheen to the King Seiko strap versus the more matted appearance on the alligator strap here from Omega. I will say, hey, depending on your likes, I think this probably dresses up a little bit better with that extra sheen. This is definitely more tuxedo ready. Whereas the matted sheen is going to be something that, of course, will still look great in a tux, but will also, I think, maybe be slightly more versatile when it comes to that business casual dress attire. So these are very cool. I guess I could throw them on wrist. I don't want to, of course, add any more wear and tear to these straps because these are sold, or they're going to be sold by Belmont, and I want the next owners to be able to do that. So what I'll do, instead of cutting away, I'll just drape them on the wrist so we can get a look. And of course, if you want to go back to when I owned this watch and see how it looked on the wrist, you have that option. But check that out. Very beautiful. I won't get it too close to the lens, of course, because then you're gonna have some perspective distortion. It's gonna look quite large. But if we keep it down here, you can see this thing is absolutely beautiful. I do have a 7.5-inch wrist, which is on the larger side, but I do have a rounder wrist. So it's not like this big flat wrist that just accommodates to every watch. So I still do have to find stuff that fits me right. And I'll say it is not as easy as just the measurements on a watch in terms of the width or the length or the thickness. It's really the design, and then of course some other ratios in terms of like the dial to bezel to case. But this looks fantastic. Now let's see the Omega. This thing is gorgeous. Definitely a very timeless look. Of course, again, a little bit close, a little bit of distortion, but at least you get to see that gorgeous detail. But let's keep it a little lower. That looks fantastic. There's definitely something very dressy, very, gosh, I'll probably get it wrong, but maybe Art Deco. I guess it's more mid-century in terms of that. But I mean, the use of the numerals, it's just a handsome, well designed. I mean, this is a lovely watch. This is absolutely an heirloom piece waiting to happen. And of course, it does have the commemoration of London. So if you are one of the gentry from the UK or something like that, then you could absolutely have that draw to something like this. And it's not the cheapest Omega you can get out there, because there are some vintage Seamasters, especially because it's such a huge line, that are quite affordable. But this one is super nice. I mean, beautifully done. That blued seconds hand is gorgeous. I mean, the whole thing is gorgeous. This thing, it's modern enough, right? 2012. In terms of its construction and everything, it does have great water resistance, 120 meters or 12 bar. I think that's fantastic. Compared to the Seiko, which by comparison is a little bit lacking in that department at just 50 meters or 5 bar. So these are just handsome pieces. Now, there's no loom on either of these, but I think it would be nice to kind of see what the low light transition might look like on these before we say our goodbyes. Okay guys, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Of course, again, no loom, but one thing I always like to work in, of course, is a bit of low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to maybe include a bit of harsh lighting that could expose any types of production defects. In this case, just some smudging and some fingerprints and whatnot here and there, but otherwise these are both just gorgeous pieces. And you can see their different dial textures really make a difference. You see that beautiful matted texture, satin-like almost, in terms of the Omega dial versus that more traditional sunray dial that you're going to get on the Seiko. Both of them do have a pale silver dial, but you can see because of that sunray orientation, it definitely has a bit more play and more of a dynamic range in terms of getting some deeper, almost blue-like hints in there in terms of like kind of gunmetal gray that comes into play with just little streaks of highlights from time to time, or a complete saturation. While when you look at the that beautiful dial from Omega, it's definitely more consistent all the way around. As it fades kind of equally across the dial, and then as it gets brighter and reflects more, it kind of just does it all in one shot, which is nice. And it does accentuate how crisp that text is right underneath the logo and the 12 o'clock. Speaking of logos at 12, check out that beautifully applied Seiko logo, where I will say the execution on the handset and the rest of the dial furniture in terms of the indices on the Seiko are going to be, I'd say, more complex by comparison. That doesn't necessarily mean better, because sometimes, especially within a dress watch space, you're going to want something more minimalist, more refined. I think, again, these are just two gorgeous watches to pair next to each other. I think they're great. And again, as much as during my ownership of the King Seiko, I would just hear, oh, there's just, not a lot of people have dress watches. Yes, dress watches used to be the de facto everyday watch, and that changed. More people wear sports watches now. Divers, are hugely popular, but there was a time, a simpler time, when the dress watch was the everyday watch, because people's everyday attire was just a little bit dressier than it is today. Today, everyone's very casual. Even stealth wealth can be very casual, but in terms of kind of that understated, very timeless old money look, these types of designs really pop in terms of just how beautiful, how timeless they are, and everything that they kind of have to offer as a whole versus just feature by feature. No, these aren't the most water resistant, the most robust in terms of magnetic resistance or shock resistance, but you're getting something that is just purposely designed to be absolutely gorgeous, to have little features there that just really, really shine under just intense scrutiny. So guys, let me know what you all think in the comments below. Which would you choose? What would you pair it with? What situations, right? Hey, if I was going to a wedding, I'd want this one. If I was going to a job interview, I'd wear that one. I'm ready to hear it all. Let's talk shop down in the comments below. And another huge shout out to Belmont Watches. Thank you guys so much. I'm looking forward to getting these packed up, sent back to you, so hopefully the new owners can enjoy soon. Thanks, guys. They say you don't just buy the product, you buy the seller too. Well, here's a seller I can absolutely recommend. Belmont Watches in San Diego. They deal in both new and pre-owned, from industry mainstays to niche independents, across vintage and modern references. I've personally purchased watches from them and even had watches serviced and repaired through the local network. Whether you're just browsing current inventory or searching for a special reference, reach out and connect. You never know, they might be able to source the exact model you've been looking for. They drop new models every Thursday and even offer free 2-day shipping on all orders. Check out this amazing one-owner find. A true piece of history, equipped with genuine one-off memorabilia, personal to the Royal Canadian Air Force pilot who wore it proudly for so many years. You just can't find packages like this via standard retail. It takes real-world industry experience to create an offering like this. And if you're ever local, visiting downtown San Diego, you can check out their selection in person, or just stop by and talk shop with some fellow enthusiasts who also happen to be some of the most down-to-earth and knowledgeable guys in the industry. So before your next big purchase, make sure to check out Belmont Watches and tell them Mark sent you. Thanks, guys.